Good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar called Smart Planning Our Future Cities. My name is Amanda Smith, and I'm Managing Director of Canadian Urban Institute, and I'm really pleased to welcome you to today's call. I will be the event MC for today's webinar. So with the launch of the Federal Smart Cities Challenge and the steady rise of technology in our daily lives, smart cities are becoming a mainstream conversation. And yet there's still a lot of questions about smart cities. What is a smart city? How do we use technology to best meet our community's needs? And how do we ensure that by implementing technology, we're improving accessibility and access to services and not creating new barriers? These are some of the questions that we've been exploring at the Canadian Urban Institute, and we're hoping to help tackle on today's webinar. And also some of the questions we've been addressing as we've been creating a new resource that we're excited to tell you about in today's discussion. So who are we? We're the Canadian Urban Institute. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. We've been around for about 30 years. And two of our main areas of focus are applied research, which we'll tell you a bit about today, and knowledge sharing. So convening events in support of healthier urban development. One of the initiatives that we work through is called LSNetwork. It started around 10 years ago, focused on accelerating the adoption of LED street lighting, and it's since expanded to look at how to use technology to support greater quality of life and generally a healthier urban development. And through this program, we've created over the years over 20 resources and an interactive map. So lots of information if you want to hear more about that, available on our website, LSNetwork.org. Okay, so we're looking forward to the agenda that we will be presenting today. So we'll start with Geneva Starr, who will talk about our new resource that is a guide to smart city master planning. We have Travis Peter, who will tell you about St. Albert's Smart City Master Plan. We're excited as well to have Joe Flatt from Evergreen Canada, who will talk about their new publication and generally how to plan for smarter mid-sized cities. And finally, Dorothy Eng from Code for Canada, who will talk about the importance of engaging the community in smart cities planning. So we have a pretty packed agenda, but we would love to hear from you. If you have comments or questions as we go, feel free to enter them in the chat window. And if we have a few minutes at the end, we will respond to them. So yeah, please feel free to comment as we go along. And so these are our speakers here, and we'll introduce each of them before they speak. And lastly, I would just like to thank our sponsors who helped make today's event possible, and our LSNetwork program in general. Our sponsors are Natural Resources Canada, Current powered by GE, Cree, Census, and Amoresco. So thank you very much to our sponsors. So now I'm pleased to introduce my colleague, Geneva Starr. She's the project manager of the LSNetwork program, and she's going to tell you about our new Smart City Master Planning Guide, called Smart Planning Our Smart Cities, that she'll tell you about, and it will be available soon. And she'll talk about the objective of this guide is really to help municipalities and communities use technology, smart technology, and connectivity to help achieve their community goals. And we developed this through research and through our own practical experience in helping municipalities tackle this question of how best to use technology to benefit all of their citizens. So I'll pass it over to you, Geneva, to tell us more.
Okay, thanks, Amanda. So that was a really great introduction on what our objectives are and sort of where we're coming from, but some background on the guide itself, or why we're here today, set the context a little more, is that it's predicted that by 2050, there's going to be 50 billion connected devices, or things that talk to the internet, that exist. So there's this huge technology revolution happening, coupled with the rapid rise of urbanization, and municipalities are trying to figure out how to respond. Another thing that's happening is, I'm sure, well, as Amanda said, and I'm sure you're all very aware of it, is the Infrastructure Canada Smart Cities Challenge. So there's a lot of opportunities out there for communities, but it can be difficult to navigate, even just what are the most appropriate digital solutions for your community. We also see another challenge for smart city initiatives is actually overcoming that well-founded risk averseness of local government. So to address these issues, you can develop a comprehensive smart city master plan that we see as a proactive process for municipalities to identify their specific needs, unite stakeholders, and outline a roadmap or action plan to achieve the effective and beneficial deployment of these solutions. So to assist in this idea of smart city master planning and to help ensure that technology is going to be used in its most effective way to support communities, LSNetwork has developed a smart city master planning guide. This is a practical guide intended to support municipalities, provinces, solution providers, really any of the key stakeholders involved in smart city master planning and smart city solutions for communities across Canada. It outlines key strategies for plan development, along with some examples of global best practices. So it's currently in its final draft form, and it's going to be finalized and published to our website, lsnetwork.org, by the end of this month, and we'll be sure to inform you when that happens. For today, we're just going to go through some very high-level findings that we have presented in the guide throughout 6 sections. So we have an introduction, and then we've outlined basically 5 phases to initiating, developing, and implementing your smart city master plan. So the obvious first place to start is to define what a smart city means to your community, because there is no globally accepted definition, and it could be unique to each community based on the local conditions and the local context. For the purpose of the LSNetwork program and for our webinar here today, we understand smart city as a term that refers to improving the quality of life for people at home, work, and play through the use of data and digital technology integrated throughout the built environment. So this technology is used to provide opportunities for economic development, as well as to enhance urban services, resource conservation, and cost effectiveness. Communities often categorize these opportunities into key focus areas. So in our infographic here, we've gone with the Smart Cities Challenge, as we've seen a lot of cities now moving to align their focus areas with that. So you have your mobility, healthy living, and recreation, environmental quality, and safety and security, empowerment, inclusion, and economic opportunity. So we also want to stress that under this definition of the smart city, the development of a smart city is community-led and not technology-led. But the solutions are built on a foundation of high-speed broadband and open data, with policies for data inclusion and data security. So getting into the actual phases, as we move along here, I just want to point out that in the guide, what we've done is actually come up with outcomes that you should have achieved at the end of each phase. So we've listed these outcomes in the boxes here. So getting into phase 1 is build your team. So solutions implemented through a smart city master plan, of course, are going to impact a wide range of stakeholders, not just those with a focus on technology. To develop an effective and championed master plan, you've got to break down those silos, those information and agency silos, to build internal and external partnerships and foster collaboration. So this section is really all about understanding that master planning is strengthened with increased diversity of voices and contributions. And as part of this, you want to make sure that all service areas of a municipality are informed of the Smart City Initiative and are actually engaged in the Smart City Master Plan team where effective. It's also really important, we found this in a lot of the major Smart City Master Plans that we've reviewed. It's really important to include industry experts also in the Smart City Master Plan team, because they're going to bring that additional knowledge, capacity, and potential funding resources that your community might not have. Into phase 2, so this is establishing the context. Each Smart City Master Plan is going to be unique in its focus areas because every community faces different challenges, is in a different state of readiness, and has access to very different resources and solutions. So by establishing the local context for your plan, you can make sure that technology solutions can be planned strategically to result in the highest economic and social returns. So this section includes benchmarking yourself, conducting significant community engagement with the public and local business. So Dorothy is going to touch on this later and get really into the details of this. You want to understand your existing municipal strategies and know what data you have available and what you need. And then finally, define what your overarching objectives are that are going to help guide the development of this master plan. So here we just have an example from the City of Vancouver. They actually hired an outside consultant to assess the city's current state of digital readiness back in 2012. So this was just before they were developing their first digital strategy in 2013. And as you can see, they looked at 4 different stages of digital maturity, from absent to exploring to enabled and finally connected. And then they looked at how they measure up to a lot of the other global players in the smart city space. So phase 3 is when you want to really define the outcomes, because the Smart City Master Plan is essentially a roadmap or an action plan to achieve these specific desired outcomes that are determined based on your internal and external consultation and are areas where you are pretty sure technology solutions would be effective and beneficial. So by understanding the greatest challenges and also the areas of strength within your community, which you have identified through establishing the context previously, the Smart City Master Plan team can identify your desired outcomes of the plan across all municipal service areas. And outcomes describe what the community aims to achieve through the deployment of smart city solutions, and is outlined by Infrastructure Canada, or should be measurable, ambitious, and achievable. So in this section, we're looking for communities to know what their desired outcomes are of the Smart City Master Plan, but then also have a list of available technology solutions to help achieve these outcomes. So to make sure that this is feasible or viable through a Smart City Master Plan. But throughout all of this, it's important to consider that the complexity and diversity of available solutions is continuously advancing, and the most appropriate solutions for your community will change over time. So because of this, a Smart City Master Plan should not be prescriptive in specific technology nor solution providers, but rather focus on outlining the desired outcomes and the general strategies that are expected to achieve them. So here is City of Edmonton Smart City Strategy. We think it's a great example of this approach. It outlines 3 overarching outcomes and then smart city initiatives that will contribute to each. So you can find this strategy online at edmonton.ca, but there are 3 outcomes, which I think are great, so we'll just tell them to you. Is to become a city that is a resilient center, that is adaptive, well-planned, and flexible to withstand external shocks. A city that is a livable community, so where citizens are healthy, engaged in the community, and actively minimize their environmental footprint. And a city that is a workable city that connects citizens through advanced mobility, broadband, academic institution, and smart infrastructure. Okay, so moving on to phase 4. So this is where you've done all the background work, you know what your objectives are, and generally how you might be able to get there. So you want to put this all together and develop the plan. So an effective Smart City Master Plan is something that's going to mobilize stakeholders around a vision and is going to lay out a roadmap or, again, action plan of strategies to achieve these communities' desired outcomes. As I said, it's going to draw on the information on the current state. It's going to draw on community engagement, on the existing strategic priorities, and of the available data and the new data that you're going to collect. So within our guide that the LSNetwork has developed, we outline some key steps or key sections to a master plan that we have developed based on a review of the planning process used in municipalities across Canada and internationally. So very briefly, you want to first set the local context. So what is unique about your community and where do you stand locally and internationally? You want to define your vision and mission statements, so drawing on those overarching objectives and ensuring to aspire to be visionary, because this document is something really that you're going to use to spur change within the community. Then you outline a roadmap or the action plan of what you're going to do. So this should include for each desired outcome, the proposed smart city strategy, any policy reform needed, potential partners, or even just that there may be partners involved, the expected implementation method, the predicted timelines and budget, and potential funding sources. So a really good example of this is in the St. Albert Smart City Master Plan. So we're really excited to have Travis get into more details in a minute here. Obviously, when you set outcomes and an action plan, you want to have a way to measure that. So you want to have your evaluation framework and your key performance indicators. And then the last part of this section actually goes through approaches to overcome common challenges of smart city planning. So this is where we recommend you looking into the guide for more details once it's published, because it provides guidance and also some great examples on how to address certain challenges. So the challenges we look at are, moving from visioning to planning to reform, and then planning for technology obsolescence, interoperability, digital inclusion, how you're going to address cybersecurity and data privacy, and then also ensuring redundancy and resiliency of all your solutions. So another great example is the Newcastle Smart City Strategy from Australia. It's just really comprehensive in all these areas that we've laid out. They present 24 smart city strategies across 6 focus areas, so they've really gone into a lot of detail there. And again, you can find that at the Newcastle website. So the last phase of our guide here, once you've actually developed the guide and how you want to do it, how you want to implement all your strategies, is implementing the smart city plan itself. So similar to plan development, the approach to implementing is going to vary between jurisdictions, again, because of the unique context and your unique goals as well. But in the guide, we have outlined some best practices to consider based, again, on what we've seen nationally and internationally. So I think important to stress here is that implementation will require significant funding, which may be required at different stages of implementation or by initiative or by strategy. A common lesson learned that we have seen from reviewing funding strategies for other smart city master plans is the importance of partnerships with local businesses, academic institutions, and governments to develop a broad funding base and to leverage the expertise of various groups. So in the guide, we've gone through some potential funding and financing options. This includes self-funding and financing, public-private partnerships, private investment, and government infrastructure financing. But really, there's a lot of innovation in this area for smart cities because these are really new and different projects, so they're not funded like other infrastructure projects across the country. So just, look out to what other countries are doing and really explore your options. We have an example here of a private investment. So a consortium of investors, including Sidewalk Labs, has been installing digital kiosks as part of the Link network in New York, London, and Philadelphia. So these kiosks replace aging payphones, they deploy public Wi-Fi, and they have other features such as wayfinding, transit information, and environmental sensors. These are entirely privately financed, and in the case of New York, they're generating over $500 million in revenue for the city. So this is an example of how you're not just looking to fund the project, but what are the opportunities for revenue generation as well. And then we wrap up our guide by saying this idea that SMART really is going to become the new norm. It's going to be expected as part of every community service, and it's going to be embedded in all your core strategies. Because embedding the smart city concept promotes an open and collaborative decision-making process that increases the pool of intellectual capital and builds a strongly connected and engaged community, which I think is all of our objectives with these smart city solutions. So that wraps up very high level of our guide, and like I said, stay tuned for that being posted by the end of April. Just before I pass it back to Amanda, we have a couple other initiatives coming up as part of the LSNetwork program. We have 2 workshops specifically on the LED technology for streetlights. But if you're interested, there's one in British Columbia in Delta and one in Quebec City. And you can find more information on canarb.org. They are both next week. So thank you. I'm going to pass it, or if you would like some more information on what I've just said, my contact information is here, but I'm going to pass it back to Amanda.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Geneva. Yes, and please stay tuned for our guide because Geneva gave you a high-level overview, but we hope that the detail will be helpful to those looking at this question of smart city master planning. So now I'm really excited to introduce our next speaker who has a lot of experience with smart city master planning. So we're pleased to have Travis Peter, the Smart City and Innovation Manager from the City of St. Albert with us today. And Travis will tell you about his experience developing the City of St. Albert's Smart City Master Plan. He'll talk about why they developed the plan, how they created it, and how they prioritized the actions in it, and maybe share some lessons that others can learn from their experience. So we'll pass it over to you now, Travis.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here and to share a few of our thoughts on our approach and a few of our thoughts in terms of how others can achieve this type of success here too. So I'm going to share my screen. You should see it in a moment. I believe that is shared.
Yep, we've got you. Thanks, Travis.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So, diving in, today I'll be focusing on three topics. Essentially, why we did the things that we did, and how we did them, and then how you could do it too. I think that's an important aspect of these type of webinars that we offer some guidance and insights for our peers right across the country. I understand also that there will be time at the end of the webinar to take your questions, and I would be happy to do that. Firstly, to start out, a bit about St. Albert for the people on the call that don't know us. We are a dynamic Alberta community of now over 65,000 residents. We border on the edge of the city of Edmonton, and we're proud that we're ranked as one of the best places in Canada to live and to raise a family and to invest, including in, I believe we were number one in Canada in money sense in 2016, I think it was. Now, although we have many advantages as a leading mid-sized city in Canada, we realize that our future competitiveness depends on our ability to innovate here today. We need to be efficient. We need to incorporate new technologies so we grow, and I think it's important to do that here now rather than later, as it becomes then more costly and more difficult. And we also need to continue to meet the expectations of our residents. And I know Geneva has mentioned that just how our society is moving into, or already a part of the digital age. And I think cities need to be aware and be ready for that evolution. It's already happening. Interestingly, before it even became a common part of our terminology here in the municipal sector, St. Albert chose to embark on a smart city journey and a strategy. We weren't fortunate at that time to have a lot of resources, such as the resource that Geneva has mentioned. So we really needed to get out there, talk to as many of our peers as we could, talk to agencies and talk to researchers and talk to industry in Alberta and all across Canada and even a few here globally. It was an exciting process. So moving on to our plan itself, it is the foundation of our vision was captured in our strategy, or what we call our master plan. Ours was crafted with three key objectives in mind, including the noted areas on the slide, but they were all focused on 6 themes. And I know that Geneva has some mentioned kind of themes that LSNetwork has utilized, and ours were very similar. We focused on people, economy, mobility, environment, living, and the governance / operations. It's also important to note that as we thought about our smart city strategy and our consultation, that smart city cannot be a strategy unto itself. Cities often have strategies that are developed by a department, and they're operationalized by that department. Smart city had to be different. It needed to be an enabler of almost every other strategy that we have, and we have a lot of them. As a sample, we have a strategy on economic development, and those activities that are identified in that strategy are supported by our smart city vision here. As part of our strategy, we also included a detailed implementation plan, and it is a prioritized plan that was based on a model that we developed in a consultation with the University of Alberta, and it includes high-level costs and timing and KPIs to measure our progress. We really wanted to, in our strategy, be tangible. I think that's an important a key message. We wanted it not to say that Sinabra would be innovative and we would be like a collaborative and explore synergies. We wanted it to mean something to people. And now after almost 4 years since we've initiated this journey, we're pleased that our strategy has contributed to amazing advances in our community, and actually now to communities across our country. I get contacted all the time with stories of how others are now exploring their own strategies, and I think that is critically important. In terms of our planning, the approach we took to our governance, our mandate to pursue the strategy that we did, came top down. It came out of our elected and administrative leaders. But I think it's important that we didn't only stop at that point. We also engaged in a bottom-up kind of a manner. So all of our departments and all the stakeholders that we spoke to were empowered to actually identify the strategies that were put forward. I think that this approach is critical in that it builds buy-in at all levels of the city and in the community. And in terms of just our governance here too, we had a structure of internal committees that were aligned to a community steering committee. The steering committee oversaw the analyses that we did, the research, the engagement, and the development of the strategy itself. On the slide, you'll see the membership of that committee, but I think it's important that we included our residents, we included our businesses, and we included our internal leaders as resources. And we gave the committee a budget, and we gave it a person. Well, that would be me. That was its lead to assist it in all of its efforts. At the end of our process, the committee actually then made a recommendation to our council to approve that strategy. In terms of our engagement, it was as Geneva has stated, engagement is an important aspect of strategy development. In fact, in St. Albert, Smart City was one of our largest engagements that we've ever had. And we reached over 2,000 of our residents, our staff, our businesses, our researchers, our students, and more in the community, and just like right across Canada, as I said. A full summary of our process and the feedback that we got out of all of our methods of engagement is included in our master plan as an appendix. Also, as a part of our engagement efforts, we focused on reaching outside of our borders. We've previously and we currently support many industry and smart city events across the country. We've led and we've hosted foreign delegates that come to the community or that we go to their communities. We've engaged in hundreds of media interviews and features talking about how smart cities should approach their planning in the futures. And we've talked to communities across the country. I think that's a very important aspect to understand how others are looking at this. One of the things we're also very proud of is that we offer advice to the province of Alberta and the government of Canada, and we're focused on shaping the direction of policy and of funding programs similar to the National Smart Cities Challenge around smart cities and just how they're supported into the future. Another means that we demonstrated our commitment is that we founded and now lead this entity we call the Alberta Smart City Alliance. The alliance was formed in 2014 as Alberta's only a collaboration focused on the advancement of smart city solutions to the problems and the opportunities that are facing our communities. Our board includes those on the screen. We've tried to mix the public and the academic and the private sectors. And on top of this board that's leading the alliance, we've grown to nearly 400, and I think 5 other members across the province. It's an exciting vehicle to connect our sectors, to support investment and growth in the market, and to drive awareness and solution development across the country. In terms of our projects that we've done, we always get asked about our projects, and we started these even as we were developing the strategy. So I like to say that we're building the airplane as we were planning it. As a sample, we became the first in Canada to secure a fully electric bus fleet. Currently, I think we have 5, and we're moving to convert all of our buses in the coming years as funding and opportunity allows. We also have features such as sensors on our garbage cans here locally that to notify our city operators of pickups, and it's got the capacity for further data collection as we go. We offer real-time data to our transit riders and other service consumers. Our traffic signals are equipped with the vehicle detection systems that are able to actually alert us of vehicles that are approaching, and move our emergency vehicles through that intersection without needing to be delayed or potentially cause a collision too. As we move forward, many of our strategies are becoming a reality now. We, as a sample, we continue to build out our fiber optic infrastructure in the community to connect all of our facilities and our fixed assets, and we open up our network to users in the community and actually to industry as well, serving as an open infrastructure kind of an approach that others can license access at a very low cost. We are pursuing projects here currently, including sensor and network testing. We're installing tens of thousands of new meters for water that are allowing our users to be instantly notified of any leaks in their system, being notified of their usage, and that allows our city the operators to collect those readings in real time. These and the many others are underway here currently. Moving into the future, we're proud that many of the strategies identified on the screen are being pursued or actually completed, and that our council has continued to support the need to invest. We feel that the accomplishment of many of these strategies will continue to be a catalyst for a change and for growth in our community, and we're coming up actually in 2018 on a refresh of our strategy that a number of the new efforts and a number of new opportunities are going to be identified. So, just to wrap up, I've offered on your screen here 5 comments here to support you in your success, and if you're looking to take a similar approach to the approach we've taken here in St. Albert. The first is to develop a long-term strategy, so a master plan that's focused on the priorities of the community. I think it's important that the priorities be developed by and for the community. It can't just be something that is applicable to a larger center. Some of those are fun, but they may not be meaningful in your context. It's in terms of the benefit of a strategy, I think it's been a reference, but it's no secret that to governments and of all types, they love a strategy. It's a catalyst for action. It aligns their budgets and attracts support, and it rationalizes their investment. I think this is important, especially in the context that cities have a lot of priorities, and a strategy that talks about the ROI that smart city activities can achieve, and talks about the benefit to the community is critical. Second, I advocate that cities pursue some quick wins that attract attention and the support out of the community, and that we focus on a with them or a what's in it for me, like a type of a mentality. So, I think when people can see the benefit of a project in their lives, and that they see that they're being supported and that the projects are meaningful in the longer term, that attracts a lot of buy-ins. Thirdly, I think it's important to ensure that all engagement is meaningful, that people can actually affect the strategy and the direction of the community, and it's not just a process that you were checking at the end and ask how they like it. It's got to be meaningful engagement. We also think that that a municipality has a role in supporting innovation and in bringing their people together. Right? That is a role of a municipality. Fourthly, I think that the cities need oversight and resources, so like people and budget, to support their programs. Programs need a champion, and they need people to ensure that they stay a focus of that community amongst all other priorities. Oops. And then lastly, I suggest that smart city principles and policies be embedded in the community. So making it stick. It needs to be a part of standards. It needs to be a part of planning for infrastructure. It needs to be a part of your growth planning, and it needs to be a part of the culture of the organization and the community. It should become the new norm over time. Good. Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Travis. That was a great overview of the City of St. Albert's Smart City Master Plan, and I think those recommendations for success are great pointers for others on the line who are developing their own Smart City Master Plan. So thank you for that. Travis's presentation and all of the presentations from today will be made available on our website. One last point before we get into our next speaker is our agenda is quite full today, so we might not have time to get to questions, but we encourage you to please still submit them. We'll give you Geneva's email address again, so you can submit them by email as well, and we'll forward them to the appropriate person and get feedback. We want this to be an interactive session, but we do have it a kind of jam-packed agenda, so we'll send you Geneva's email in a moment. Okay, so now I'm excited to introduce our next speaker, who is Joe Flatt, Senior Manager, Policy and Partnerships from Evergreen. And Joe will discuss today Evergreen and Code for Canada's new publication called How to Be Smarter. She'll talk a bit about how they define smart cities, and she'll highlight some examples specifically from mid-sized cities, which I know will be applicable to many of you on today's call. So with that, we'll pass it over to Joe.
Great. Can you hear me and see my screen?
Yes, we can hear you and see you. Thanks, Joe.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you, everyone. So my name is Joe Flatt, and I am a senior manager, as was mentioned, at Evergreen, and the lead of Evergreen's Mid-Sized Cities program. So Evergreen is a national nonprofit organization dedicated to making cities flourish. You may know us because of our site in Toronto, the Evergreen Brickworks, an old brick factory that we've transformed into an education, training, and community space in the city's Don Valley. Evergreen runs a range of programs to engage Canadians of all kinds, whether municipal leaders or the general public, in city building. And I'm really excited to be speaking to you today about our paper that we prepared as part of our Mid-Sized Cities program. So the Mid-Sized Cities program is a multi-year interdisciplinary project that aims to help Ontario and increasingly Canada's mid-sized cities thrive. Through that work, we have a national learning exchange for municipal leaders and Indigenous leaders, an annual research series, a roundtable that we'll be hosting on May 16th in London, Ontario, and you're all welcome to join. I'll follow up with the details on that, as well as some deep dive research, much like this paper that I will be speaking to you about today. And the program really came about out of the recognition that many of our mid-sized cities tend to get forgotten in city building conversations, despite being home to a third of our country's population. And we're really trying to raise the attention and provide resources for this specific city type. And so to that point, why did we come about doing this paper? As was mentioned in the introduction, now is a really important moment for Canada with our Smart Cities Challenge, our previous Amazon bidding, the Sidewalk Labs. There is an elevated conversation here locally around smart and cities and data. And it's a challenging one because we need to be critical about what we do and how we do it. And we need to be having these important conversations now before we jump on the fast moving technology train without really being sure about what we are doing. So I'll spend a little bit of time saying how we approach smart cities and the definition. There's many definitions out there, and much like what Geneva shared, we think about it as technology as a tool to get us to the cities that we hope to have, or the vision for our cities. And so smart cities are resilient, inclusive, and collaboratively built cities that leverage technology and data. And it's thinking about those outcomes that for our cities that really dictate how we use those tools in moving forward. Whether addressing issues of social inclusion, resolving local problems, various things that we all aspire for in our cities. So I will tell you a bit more about this paper. In our work at Evergreen through this program, we let the experts and the doers speak to themselves. So this paper really came about after conversations with lots of leaders in our mid-sized cities who have that expertise to sort of understand the intersection and the unique context of data and tech in mid-size. So we spoke with activists and civic tech leaders and provincial policy advisors and municipal staff, community leaders, various others in order to prepare this paper. It also includes some cases and ultimately some recommendations that I will share with you today. So number one, needs first, technology second. So this might sound simple, but it's actually a surprisingly easy one to forget. And I think, Travis, you did a really great job sort of explaining your story and your evolution and reiterated some of these ideas. But it's important that we understand what we actually are trying to do when we think about using technology as a solution or as an opportunity for solving something. Again, technology is but one of the many tools in our toolbox, and it's important that we evaluate and understand what that problem is. There are processes that we can use to actually go through that problem definition process. So one of the things that we heard from our interviewees was user-centered design and the importance of putting the user or the people who will be ultimately accessing that technology at the center of defining the problem and coming up with a solution. So an example is the city of Guelph. They've been doing some great work using customer journey mapping when they came to understanding how to improve their marriage license processes to evaluate and actually understand the different needs of different couples. So whether you're an early years couple, or a late stage couple, what are the types of things you would need to actually go about creating your marriage license? And through deeply understanding their users, they could clarify the problem, create a tool that improved how the city delivers its services, the overall customer experience, and then potential ways for digital technology to ease the process for residents and city staff. Next off, design for inclusion. So the importance of inclusion cannot be underestimated in the adoption of new technologies. One of the remarkable facts we learned in this work was just how extreme the digital divide is in Canada and how it cuts along income lines. So in the words of Ian Golden, as the world continues to change at such a rapid pace, which we certainly know it is, you see people getting left behind more quickly. And so in Canada, 95% of people in the highest income quartile are connected to the internet, whereas only 52% in our lowest income quartiles. And inclusion doesn't just mean access to broadband, but also the resources to use it. So computers, education, digital literacy. And there's some interesting examples across Ontario to actually address some of these challenges. So the city of Pickering has done a fair bit to provide more Wi-Fi spots across the city. The library provides a portable internet device that can be rented for up to 2 weeks. And some of you may be familiar with the town of Innisfil's recent partnership with Uber to deliver the first ride-sharing transit system in Canada. So the city provides a $3 flat rate to certain parts of the town, such as public library or city hall. But from the inclusion perspective, they recognize that not everyone has a smartphone or not everyone has this app. So they created a 24-hour call center to dispatch rides for those who can't or don't know how to use the Uber app. They've also done a lot to provide educational resources, which has been really important for making sure that the service is useful and accessible. Sort of building on that, in an era of Facebook and sort of general privacy concerns, it's really important that we think about the codes of conduct, the principles and the policies for data, technology and tools to consider sort of long-term ownership, security and privacy within the lens of inclusion as well. So next off, let the community in. So as we know, cities can't possibly do everything themselves, and it's the community who can actually help drive some amazing innovations in our cities if we give them the resources and the space and the capacity to do it. So supporting community-led activities can help with understanding the needs of residents. It can actually offer a potential resource pool to fill skill and knowledge gaps within municipal government and provide adjunct capacity for digital projects. So some examples of that are open data strategies, which basically means putting data out into the community and seeing what they can do with it, leveraging tools like a hackathon, which is a sprint event where people can use that data around to problem solve essentially. And so for those that haven't been to one of those before, it's like a 48 hours of nonstop hacking fun where people come together, they might sleep over and literally work to come up with a solution over a tight timeline. Look outside for new solutions. So part of being innovative in this time is looking at where there's other things that are being done that are worth replicating or emulating. So as Travis shared, what's there that might be useful for you and your municipalities. And of course, we suggest this with a dose of caution, recognizing that things need to be customized and done properly. And within the private sector procurement side, we've already seen that there's a potential loss of data ownership for some municipal governments who do choose to go that route on certain smart city projects. So definitely take some caution and some proper policy development before going too far ahead down that road. But I did want to share an example that we thought was innovative. It was the Guelph Civic Accelerator program. So the Accelerator, for those that aren't familiar, is a pilot project co-developed by the City of Guelph's innovation team and the Guelph Lab to connect municipal government with entrepreneurs, startups, students, and companies to develop innovative solutions. The program essentially changes the traditional RFP model and uses an embed process where identified candidates actually work with the city to develop the solution rather than being limited to an oftentimes constrained direct RFP process. Nextly, think beyond city boundaries. So I think again here I'm echoing a bit of what Travis shared, but resources always are a challenge for city, especially for our mid-sized ones. But there are actually many of you across the country, and collaboration and sharing of best practices is a really critical way to sort of address some of those challenges. There is also a Mid-Sized Cities Forum, as I mentioned, happening on May 16th, and these kinds of conversations that can be really useful with your work. As Travis mentioned, the Alberta Smart City Alliance was an example I was going to share, but there's also the Open Cities Index, a private initiative in partnership between Canada's Open Data Exchange and Public Sector Digest, which actually audits existing open data initiatives. We also in Southwestern Ontario have the SWIFT, the Southwestern Integrated Fiber Technology Network, which is an example of pooled resources to actually increase buying power and influence. And SWIFT developed a long-term infrastructure plan to attract and subsidize service providers to build fiber optic internet infrastructure in areas that weren't being serviced. Enable and empower public servants. So one of the challenges interviews expressed with us was this idea of a knowledge gap within the public service when it comes to the big picture of technology. But there's also this recognition that municipal staff, as we've heard, are really in the right positions to be the leaders of amazing change within our municipal government if they're given the resources, education, and license to do it. But some municipalities are constrained, and so Greater Sudbury shared with us what they did with co-op students to be able to test and implement new technologies around their geographical information system work. So they worked with co-op students who knew the new technologies, did some training, some piloting and some testing, and that helped build capacity with staff. Code for Canada, as Dorothy may speak to, but runs a fellowship program to embed teams of professionals from outside of government within government. So there are certainly ways to build capacity and resources there. Invest in the fundamentals. So important that before we chase the big shiny things and the really exciting components of data and technology, that we have our sort of bread and butter services, such as app-supported parking payment, kind of in place and ready to go. Starting with some of these small, iterative, low-cost, technology-driven improvements can build capacity and set us up for future scaling. Not to say that mid-sized cities should be bold. Of course, we should be shooting for the moon, but not at the expense of some basic services. One example that I think is notable is in 2017, Kitchener invested $5 million to install more than 16,000 energy-efficient smart city lights. So, a pretty basic thing, lighting. But the energy savings means that they'll be able to pay off what's a 20-year project in 7 years. And with all the money they will be generating, they're able to reinvest that into a civic innovation lab that will bring startups, large organizations to develop other types of tech solutions. Nextly, integrate to implement. So, as Travis alluded to and spoke to many times, cities that integrate technology and data into their planning and budgeting processes have an easier time championing digital adoption. When smart city concepts are part of official plans, bylaws, data and technology becomes a recurring consideration rather than an afterthought. Lastly, brand to build buy-in. So, attraction retention is a common challenge felt by many of our mid-sized cities, especially for youth. But a city that is hip with the times and is able to leverage technology wisely can actually be quite a draw for young people looking for a place to work and live. As we heard from our colleagues in the City of London, they actually have a challenge of having hundreds of tech jobs that they can't fill. And part of their solution has been to invest in the image and the communications of the city as a vibrant place for technology-related opportunities with a high quality of life. As many of you may also know, Waterloo, Kitchener, and Cambridge is a success story because of Research in Motion and BlackBerry, but they leveraged that moment to invest in other types of things like Communitech, which is an incubator that over the past 5 years has supported 1,845 new technology startups and raised $650 million in investment. And now Kitchener is classified as Canada's fastest growing tech talent market. So there's some amazing things happening. And definitely lots to ponder here. There are many inspiring examples happening all over Ontario and across the country. And at Evergreen, we are certainly happy to connect you with others that you think are interesting that we showcase in our report or otherwise. As I mentioned, we have this conference happening on May 16th, which we invite you to attend. And we're also happy to chat with you at any point around these ideas and how we can help bring them forward. So thank you so much, and I look forward to your questions.
Okay, thanks so much, Joe. That was a great presentation. And for those interested, we did receive a question. We'll post a link to the paper that Joe was discussing when we post the information about the webinar, so you can find out more. Just one note here, we will go slightly past 1 p.m., so just a kind of process note for everyone. And the full recording of this webinar will be made available online. But we're really excited about our last speaker in today's webinar. We have Dorothy Eng, the Director of Partnerships from Code for Canada. And Dorothy's going to provide the perspective by talking about best practices for engaging the community in technology projects. So we think, her contribution is really important to today's webinar, and hope you'll be able to stay to listen to what she has to offer. So thanks again for joining us, Dorothy, and we'll pass it over to you.
Thanks, no worries. Okay, I'll dive right in. So I'm Dorothy, I'm from Code for Canada. We are a national nonprofit that helps governments to build digital capacity by connecting them with professionals from Canada's tech and design sector so that they can deliver public services that better meet residents' needs, also while building that internal digital capacity. I'm going to talk today about some of our programs that we do and where we're helping municipal teams to deliver truly smart city solutions. But before I do that, I wanted to start with a bit of a story to help illustrate our work. So up until 2014, the story starts in California. In 2014, California had been struggling with the second worst food stamp participation rate in the country. So over 2 million people who couldn't afford weekly groceries, but who qualified for food stamps weren't actually using and benefiting from the program. So to tackle this problem, the state of California brought in a team of Code for America fellows. These were coders, designers from the tech sector who had experience building tech products at tech companies. And the fellows essentially approached the problem in a really unconventional way. They started with users. So they went directly to residents, end users, case managers to understand why people weren't signing up for food stamps. And what they found was that while there are a number of barriers to people receiving food stamps, one of the biggest was that it was actually really difficult to enroll. This, as you can see on this slide, is the application process for the food stamp program. It was over 50 web pages long. It took over an hour to fill out. It wasn't mobile compatible, so people who didn't have a computer had to book a computer at a library, which is a further barrier to filling out the application form. And also throughout the application, you had to take photocopies of documents or scan them in, and then actually mail them into the Human Services Agency department. And then after this whole process, after you submit your application, a person still wouldn't know if they qualified for the program until many weeks later. So the entire process was incredibly cumbersome and untransparent, and was actually a barrier to participating in the program itself. So based on this information, the Code for America fellows worked with residents and case managers to prototype a solution, tested it with them, and then they iterated it on it based on their feedback. And they kept doing this iterative cycle of software development until they had this product after 12 months. This is called Get Cal Fresh. The solution was mobile friendly. It simplified the application to 10 minutes, and it allowed users to connect with their caseworker directly via text message, who would then walk them through the application process. So ultimately, the application process was much more accessible than what it was before that. Residents loved the solution, case managers loved it, and since this application was deployed in 2015, it has expanded across multiple counties and has processed over 70,000 applications. I really love this story because it shows what's possible when the processes behind technology and design are used to engage residents and deliver services that actually meet their needs. So similar to Code for America, at Code for Canada, when we think of our cities of tomorrow and smart cities, we think about governments being resident-focused and asking residents and users what problems need to be solved. This approach to problem solving, that is starting with end users, is actually really common in the tech sector. And when it's applied to the design and delivery of government services, that's when we believe we can truly create scalable impact in our communities. So similar to Code for America, at Code for Canada, we also have a fellowship program that embeds teams of tech experts into government to deliver a digital product or service. Code for Canada recruits teams of 3 technologists. They consist of 1 UX designer, 1 product manager, and 1 web developer. And we embed them in a government partner to work on a scoped challenge for 10 months. Throughout the 10 months, the fellows bring modern digital tools and techniques that are really commonly used in the tech sector, like human-centered design and agile development, and they bring them into the government context. At the end of the 10 months, there are 2 main outcomes. The first is that the fellows help their government partners to build a tool that allows them to better deliver on their mandate. But really, that's what happens on the surface. The second outcome is actually has this much deeper value, in that throughout the 10 months, the fellows don't work in a vacuum. They actually work shoulder to shoulder with government staff so that the teams around them really learn by doing and adopt these new ways of working, so that essentially the staff members can continue the work of the fellows after they're gone. And the fellowship essentially helps to build that internal digital capacity for the long term at our government partners. So you may be shocked to hear that there's people from the tech sector who want to take a sabbatical or quit their jobs to work in government. Well, so are we. When we launched this program in 2017 with our first 2 government partners hosting teams of fellows, that was at the Government of Ontario and the Government of Canada, we were overwhelmed with the response and caliber of talent that applied to be a fellow. There were over 300 people who applied for just 6 roles. Many of these people had around 7 to 10 years experience building digital products at well-known tech companies. And they really all share this passion for wanting to work on projects that really made a difference and an impact on lives of Canadians. These are our first 6 fellows, Code for Canada fellows. They're currently working with our government partners at the Government of Ontario and the Government of Canada, and we're really excited to see what they develop with their partners. For the fellowship program, going forward, we're ramping up the program to bring on more government partners and more fellowship teams. So if this interests you and you're interested in the fellowship program, please do reach out to me or check out our website. My contact details are at the end of this presentation. So that's a bit about our fellowship, and that's how we're helping governments to build capacity from the inside out. But at Code for Canada, we're also helping to transform government from the bottom up, and that's through our civic tech work. So our civic tech community network is essentially our group of civic tech communities across Canada, which are groups of engaged residents that use technology, data, and design to solve civic issues. In Canada, we're seeing increasing resident engagement and a growing civic tech movement. So at Code for Canada, we support the formation and growth of civic tech communities across the country by broadcasting their success stories, helping to mobilize community organizers, and providing guidance, resources, and relationships. So what do these groups actually do? Well, they work on civic problems and with members of local government at different civic tech events. I'll dive deeper into the stuff we're working on at Code for Canada with different government partners and give you an idea of how you can tap into the energy and talent, the civic tech talent locally close to you to help make progress on your smart city projects. So the first are civic tech hack nights. These are great places to meet engaged residents who many of them want to use their tech design and data skills that they use in their day jobs, but in meaningful ways on civic projects. It's a great place to tap into the knowledge and skills of tech talent that's local to your jurisdiction, and also have a place to work on projects on an ongoing basis. And often that ongoing basis is a weekly basis. So these civic tech groups, many of them do meet up on a weekly basis. This is a picture of Civic Tech Vancouver. They meet up every few weeks. And so it does vary by jurisdiction, depending on the community itself. But essentially, the projects that work really great for these kinds of groups are essentially, projects that have been sitting on the side of your desk that you could really use some help getting over, or kind of like crossing a hump, and getting some help with collaboration with the community. So we're noticing, for example, at Civic Tech Toronto or Civic Tech Vancouver in this picture, there's been a lot of momentum gaining around early stage civic tech groups. They've been around for about 6 months now, and have 50 to 60 engaged residents meeting up every time they hold a meetup. We also run civic hackathons. These are essentially 1 or 2 day events that convene governments and nonprofits who bring forward challenges for the civic tech community to hack on. So these events often serve as a great way to form or kick off relationships with or between civic tech communities and government. Where essentially these working teams can then use their weekly hack nights to continue making progress on their projects. This is a picture of Code Across Toronto. They're a great example of a civic hackathon that's been scaling up year over year because of popularity. This is a picture of the 2017 hackathon, but they just held their 2018 and had more participants than last year. In last year, they had over 200 participants, 20 challenges put forward by government. And people were building and digging through hundreds of open data sets provided by the city and the province. Design challenges are kind of like hackathons, but they're a little longer. They last usually around 6 to 8 weeks, and they're also they're more targeted challenges on behalf of one government partner. So at Code for Canada, we run these events to encourage teams to do an entire iteration of design and development. So starting with user research, building a prototype, and then testing that with users. The output of these events is pretty amazing. You essentially get vetted prototypes and ideas that are really grounded in user research and actually addressing a need. In 2017, we ran the Youth Employment Challenge with ESDC at the federal government, and the event yielded some pretty excellent results. They had six vetted prototypes that came out at the end. And you can note that, the prize incentive was actually pretty small. And based on participant feedback, it showed that it wasn't necessarily the prize that kept teams engaged, but it was the way the event was run to keep participants learning through the process and actually connecting with their engaged government partners. So here's some screenshots of what the prototypes ended up coming out of the design challenge. And then finally, we have micro purchasing and community acceleration. This is a little newer for us. We're piloting this model right now with a few different government partners. But essentially, it's building off an existing model in other governments that we've seen, like the BC Dev Exchange. These are essentially micro purchasing is essentially a platform where government can put forward small scale projects, tech projects that they would like help with. And then people in the civic tech community can offer their help in exchange for a small amount of compensation. Essentially, this creates like a really win-win situation. Government can then access really great tech talent that they usually have a hard time accessing. And then on the other side, civic tech communities can come together to help government on a specific challenge, which helps to build their community and their ability to work together. So these projects they work really well for open source software development projects and also pieces that fall within that sole source procurement limit. So as you can see, there's a growing movement of engaged residents who want to use their tech and design skills in meaningful ways that can impact and help governments to build services that better meet residents' needs. At Code for Canada, we're looking to work with government innovators across the country who want to build services that are resident-focused and amazing to use. If you're working on a smart cities application or interested in a smart city strategy and want to work with us, please do contact me. My information is on the screen and this recording will be available through Canadian Urban Institute later. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Dorothy. That was a great presentation, and we really appreciated hearing about all of Code for Canada's work in creating engagement and community around smarter cities. So thank you for that, Dorothy. So that concludes our presentations for today, and I'd just like to thank our other guest speakers, Joe and Travis as well, and thank you, Geneva, for your presentations. I think all the perspectives were really valuable, and yeah, we appreciated everyone's contributions, and thanks to all of you as well for listening. We'll be making this recording available and as well provide links to all of the documents discussed here today. And yeah, we'd love to hear any questions or follow-up comments you have. Please forward those on to Geneva. So one more time, thanks again, everyone, and have a great day.